Happy New Year to you. My name is Oral Ofori, your human interest show producer, hashtag the African Dream. Welcome to today's edition of the show. We have for our special guest, Adetunji Omotola. He is a public speaker and African strategist. He is the founder of 12 Disciples, Leaders, and Africa Now. Mr. Omotola is originally from Nigeria, but presently is based in South Africa. He is a Bloomberg Certified Financial Journalist and alumni of the Henley Business School Executive Speaker Program. In 2014, Adetunji was featured in Forbes Africa magazine. He regularly contributes to CNBC Africa and other outlets across South Africa that are into media. And he is an in-house columnist for The African Dream, run by yours truly. Welcome to The African Dream, Adetunji. Give us a brief history, very brief, about yourself.
Look, first of all, Oral, thank you very much for having me on your Africa Dream platform. I think it gives me great pleasure, not only because you're my brother from Ghana, the country that I've grown to love even almost more than Nigeria, but also because this platform is the first interview that I've been on in 2021. And as you know, we're only in the first week of 2021. But let me just give your audience a sense of who I am.
Yeah.
I'm one of 12 children. My father was a professor of law, a dean of faculty of law, and also he rose to become a vice chancellor, as well as a senior advocate of Nigeria and a member of the most highest distinguished body of jurists and legal practitioners in Nigeria, called the Body of Benchers. My background is in law, communications, sociology. I am also a stockbroker, a qualified estate agent, a wine consultant, and a passionate African. I'm passionate about everything that has to do with Africa, be it its politics, its people, the culture, the music, the food, and the topography. I call myself a triple diasporan African optimist.
We're very excited to have you here. And for those watching, this interview is happening in the first week of January 2021 on hashtag The African Dream. We invite you to stay tuned as you hear him conversate with us, whether you're watching on Fairfax Public Access TV in the Washington, D.C. metro area, on our YouTube channel, or anywhere online. This is Oral Ofori, host of your favorite human interest chat show, hashtag The African Dream. And you just heard our guest, Adetunji Omotola, speak to us from South Africa. Now, as a 21st century African, what role do you want to see Nigeria, which is Africa's biggest economy, play in the world?
Okay, look, I think that Nigeria's position in Africa is very significant. First of all, the largest population in Africa, almost 2/3 of the US population. Nigeria has 200 million people, and the population is rising by about 3.5% on an annual basis. Projection for 2050, Nigeria will be 400 million people. Projection for 2100, which is about 70 odd years or 80 odd years from now, there will be 800 million Nigerians. So given that on the basis of size population, Nigeria is already about 20% of Africa's population, but also Nigeria is the largest oil-producing country in Africa, and by extension, one of the top oil-producing countries in the world, a member of OPEC. But also what is not spoken about a lot is Nigeria's gas reserves. We are one of the largest gas reserves in the world. And as a result, our gas potential is even more profound than our oil potential. But we don't really talk about that a lot. Now, also, when you look at the fact that Nigeria was declared the largest economy in Africa in 2014 on Sunday, April 6th, by Dr. Yemi Kale, who is the Statistician General of the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. And that gives us very good comfort, because it wouldn't make any sense logically if you're the largest population and you're not the largest economy. Because if you look at China and India, they're amongst the biggest economies in the world, not only by virtue of the fact that they have a large population, but also because they've built an industrial base. So I think the challenge for Nigeria there is that in spite of all these good things that I've talked about, we have not been able to deepen our infrastructure. We've not been able to manage our healthcare. We've not been able to put transportation at the heart of our development plans, to be able to have railways and good roads. And as a result of that, a lot of people tend to vote with their feet and leave the country in droves and become, if you like, labor, for the Western world. And whilst we're happy with the remittances, $23 billion that we get from the diaspora on an annual basis, which makes it Nigeria's second in Africa and about sixth in the entire world in terms of remittances. And that remittance of about $23 billion constitute about 80% of the annual budget of the country, which sits at about $30 billion as the Nigerian budget on an annual basis.
What role do you want to see Nigeria, play in Africa?
In terms of the role Nigeria should play, all we need to go back to is to revert to our influence as a country, Nigeria's influence in the 70s and the 80s, when Africa was the centerpiece of Nigeria's foreign policy, when Nigeria provided leadership in liberating countries in Southern Africa, from Namibia to South Africa, to Mozambique, to Zimbabwe, and even to Angola. Nigeria must play that role. We must lead from the front. Nigeria can use its oil and gas reserves to mobilize, growth and development in the ECOWAS region. Nigeria's economy is about 50% of the entire ECOWAS region. Nigeria must continue to lead in the African Union, must continue to lead. The president of the African Development Bank is a Nigerian. The Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed, is a Nigerian. We now have a Nigerian nominee by President-elect Joe Biden for cabinet. Wale Adeyemo is the first ever African-American Deputy Treasury Secretary. We're very delighted. We also have Nigerians across diaspora that are providing leadership in various disciplines. So Nigeria must stand tall. Nigeria must not be bullied by any country in Africa. We refuse to accept any other logic that Nigeria is a leading African nation and we have the economic resources. All we need to do is provide political leadership. And I believe that in the next few years, we'll be able to build that, especially through diaspora.
It's interesting. So basically, you want Nigeria to go back to reclaim her leadership role in Africa so she can positively influence the uprising of the African continent and then play the role she deserves to play in the global picture. It's a good way, it's a good thing to want to see for Nigeria and Africa. You have outlined all these wonderful things that you are expecting of leadership in Nigeria and maybe in Africa. What would you, as an African in the diaspora, do to ensure that these things become a reality? Or what would you have the African in the African continent and in the diaspora do to see Africa stand on her feet? We've already talked about the fact that we are expecting leadership. What should we expect of ourselves to promote lots of leadership?
Look, that's a very good question. I am in South Africa and I am not sleeping. I refuse to accept that because I'm not a South African, that I cannot provide leadership in my community or even to the host country. And how do we do that? We look at the issues that affect our people because we don't have governors and senators from Nigeria living with us here. We don't have traditional rulers. And the community is vulnerable because most people are on survivalist mode. They don't take care of their families, they want to send money back home, they want to buy a house, buy a car, pay school fees, and the like. So what I've been saying is that Nigerians need to focus, or even diasporans, on three key pillars: immigration, economics, and integration. I mean, you are based in the United States. You know very well that immigration was a big issue during the elections. I mean, there's so many people in America that come from different parts of the world. and who want to be able to get a better life in the United States, but their papers, they have to still get that citizenship or a path to citizenship or have some kind of work permit or legality to stay in the country. So in this part where we are, immigration is a very big hindrance to our people. It affects them. It affects their ability to be able to get a decent job. It affects their ability to be able to not be looking behind their back and say, oh, I don't have papers. And also, we don't want to see Nigerians or Ghanaians or Malawians or Gambians running away from their own countries to become refugees or dead. The second thing is economics. As Africans, we need to support one another. We need to build our own economy. I'm not saying we don't support South Africans or the countries where we live, but it's a preservation mechanism. There's a likelihood that these people will grow their businesses. Nigerians are very entrepreneurial. We like to work for ourselves. We like to be our own bosses. So economics of our own community, building our own Harlem, if you like, building our own industries like the way the Black people in America, African Americans have done well in sports, they've done well in music, they've done well in entertainment. We must be able to build that in diaspora. And the third issue, which is of paramount importance, is that we must integrate. We integrate or we're not going to be able to achieve much. So how do we integrate? Yes, people get married to locals, but it goes beyond that. You need to learn the culture, you need to learn the country, you have to understand the history, and we need to learn a language. Because once you can speak the language of your hosts, you're halfway there. So I believe if diaspora can do that, and we can, by extension, begin to build a Pan-African diaspora. So if there's a Malawian in Ghana, we're interested. If there's a Mozambican in Kenya, we're interested. So we continue to build a global Pan-African diaspora footprint based on these three pillars that I've talked about.
We're going to share a very short clip of you talking about Ken SaroWiwa. And when we get back, we'll have you tell us what was happening in that video and why it's important to you. So viewers, enjoy this short clip.
25 years ago, a gentleman by the name of Kenule Bisin SaroWiwa, the founder of the movement for the survival of the Ogoni people, was murdered by the Nigerian military regime headed by General Sani Abacha. SaroWiwa, along with 8 others, were killed on trumped-up charges of having killed 4 traditional Ogoni chiefs. Today, 25 years after, the area of Ogoni land is still polluted and degraded environmentally, and the government has not really pursued the reports by the United Nations Environmental Program to ensure that there was a cleanup in Ogoni land. We salute Ken SaroWiwa, the only Nigerian who was given a posthumous Nobel Peace Prize award. We salute Ken SaroWiwa. Viva SaroWiwa, viva!
Welcome back. This is Oral Ofori, host of your favorite human interest chat show, #The African Dream. We have for our special guest, all the way from South Africa, Adetunji Omotola, originally born in Nigeria. And thanks for letting us share that video on Ken SaroWiwa. Why was it so important for you to keep harping on the issue of Ken SaroWiwa?
I think all of us remember Kenule Bisin SaroWiwa, a human rights activist, a writer of note, a former commissioner for education in Rivers State in the 70s, the founder of the movement for the survival of the Ogoni people, who was murdered in cold blood. He was hanged to death along with 8 others by the regime of the former Nigerian maximum dictator, a gentleman by the name of General Sani Abacha on November 10, 1995. Now, what Ken SaroWiwa was fighting for is about the resources. All of us know that in Africa, whether it's diamonds or oil or gas, the locals to whom should the majority of the benefits should accrue, it does not accrue to them. And in the part of Nigeria where Ken SaroWiwa comes from, the Ogoni land, It's a very fertile, oil-rich area. And so because there's a company called Shell Petroleum that was extracting oil from that area, and because of the degradation and the pollution and the gas flaring, where animals and fish, there's no more aquatic life. These are guys who are fishermen. They can no longer fish because the oil slicks, the water is so polluted, and children, young kids, they have to drink contaminated water. And even up till today, the United Nations Environmental Program report that came out about the cleaning up of that area required oil companies and the government to come together. So even more than 20 years after SaroWiwa was killed, not much has been done. And the positives that came out of that action, and then later on, Shell had to pay the family $15 million in terms of compensation. But the irony is that nobody talks about SaroWiwa in diaspora, and those who do are not even Africans.
Well, we're happy to have had this rather brief opportunity to hear you shed some light on Ken SaroWiwa, especially as we begin the new year in 2021. Africa has been ravaged by the coronavirus, but the good thing about this whole coronavirus pandemic in Africa is that the continent continues to record one of the lowest mortality rates. Initially, the Western media predicted a very high mortality rate as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And very few weeks to the end of 2020, one of those predictors in the person of Bill Gates came out to literally confess that he is surprised at how well Africa is handling the coronavirus and doesn't understand why a lot of people are not dying. Tell us, what do you feel could be done by Africa to manage COVID-19 and whatever future pandemic might be on the horizon, given how low the death rate has been so far on the continent of Africa?
Yeah, I think Africa, we've been very lucky. I don't know what the explanation is. There's no scientific explanation. I think some people will say that we're just lucky. I think also, perhaps if you look at Africa, you know, even though we have a lot of democratic governments in Africa, there's still a lot of countries that are pretty sizable, small. Gambia, 2 million people. Lesotho, 2 million people. Namibia, 2 million people. A lot of countries in Africa are small. If you look at the UK, they struggled to lock down. They struggled hard to lock down. People wanted to still go to the park, go to the pub. They were, you know, and people were not really taking the government seriously until the prime minister then got it. And then he came out of it because even he was still shaking hands and doing all sorts of things, having contact, not wearing masks and all of that. If you contrast that with some countries like Uganda or South Africa, we were locked down hard. There was no alcohol, there was no movement, only essential services. So that can tell you that African governments, they were focused about the hard lockdown. They really locked down very hard. So I think maybe that explains it. Some people also say that we're lucky because of our weather. We don't really have harsh winter, apart from maybe parts of Southern Africa. And you can see the impact on South Africa, where we have almost 30,000, 29,000 deaths so far. But also South Africa's cases have been compounded. A lot of people in South Africa suffer from HIV and conditions like diabetes and tuberculosis, which are lung diseases. And when you get that, when you have that already and you have COVID and you're elderly, you look at the profile, a lot of elderly people have died, even in Europe. So I think we've been lucky in Africa. But the lesson we must take from this is a simple lesson. We are still not meeting the minimum United Nations or World Health Organization budget for healthcare. It's supposed to be about 8%. And you still see a lot of countries in Africa where they're not meeting the minimum budget. There's still little money being spent on maternal, care, aftercare when children are born, postnatal care. There's still a lot of hospitals that are mere consulting clinics and there's no infrastructure. And so maybe now government should jack up, through the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, the Africa Center for Disease Control. Now that we're talking about Africa Continental Free Trade, maybe they should also talk about Africa Continental Healthcare, because without health, there will be no wealth. And Africa's time is now. We need to invest in healthcare, because without healthcare, there will be no wealth.
I like how you ended that submission, hammering on the fact that without health, there will be no wealth. Let me ask you, when you look at the fact that a lot of African economies are heavily dependent on their natural resources, let's take Nigeria for a typical example, where its economy is over-dependent on its oil-rich resource. And despite all that oil wealth, there's a lot of, financial misfortune, and a lot of the people on the ground do not benefit from their country's natural resources. What are some of the things, and briefly, what are some of the things that Africa and Nigeria, for instance, could do to lift itself off of its heavy dependency on its natural resources?
Yeah, the first thing, look, Nigeria has proven that Nigeria is the best story out of Africa. Maybe South Africa, Nigeria. South Africa is the most diversified economy in Africa. They have tourism, they have hotel, they have property, they have even DSTV, the multi-choice platform. They have retail. ShopRite has done very well. Pick and Pay, even Spa, and all those companies have done very well. In Kenya, they've been able to promote through digital, tech companies in Kenya have shown the way with M-Pesa. In Ghana, manufacturing a car, Katanka cars, but they've struggled to be able to export it out of Ghana because it's even more expensive to buy a Katanka car in Ghana. In Nigeria, we have Nollywood. We've also seen a lot of young techies in Yaba and places like even, the music industry, your Davidos, Burna Boys, Wizkid. Nigerian music is dominating the entire world. They listen to Nigerian music all over. And this is without government support. You can imagine if there's now government support. Of course, we're sick of agricultural success. Things go rotten. You see, when people talk about government, who is the government? Is it a few officials who are sitting in the Ministry of Health or Finance or Tourism? People who don't have any performance targets, people whose jobs are secure, they're not elected. Most people in civil service are not elected. So the politicians are the ones who are elected, and even those politicians are not popular politicians. So they don't really listen to the people, and they're only there for the next election cycle. So I'm saying that we can build, America was built on private sector. The Bill Gates and the Teslas of this world, the Amazons, these are private companies. Even we're doing this now, government is not involved in this conversation. We decided to do it on our own. So what is happening is that the citizen, Nigerian citizen, that's Nigerian citizen, the citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Citizen, that's it. We need a citizen. Yeah, can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that.
That's the citizen. Inside there, you have all the information you need. Engaging your legislator, talking to them, their budget, how it can be reduced, e-voting, recalling a leader, everything is in here. How much they earn per month, their domestic staff allowance, entertainment allowance. This is the Bible that each African needs to ensure that they can go to their local government chairman, the national parliament representative, and say, these are the things we must do. We diversify our economy, we leverage our competitive advantage, we manufacture, we value add, we standardize our goods so that they have a global standard rather than a local standard.
So it's not just about, actively participating in the electoral process by, say, going to the polls and electing officials, whether state or government, but actually holding to account these elected officials?
Your elections are only, as you know, part of a democratic process. People think elections, that's it. There must be accountability, there must be contact, there must be constant probing, what I call disturbing and motivating our leadership. One must be a nuisance par excellence because we gave them the power. They do not vote themselves in. And while they're there, they have a responsibility to serve and protect. They cannot assume that they're better than the citizen who put them there. But the problem is the average person does not read the Constitution. They don't know their rights. They don't know that they're more powerful than any elected official because they have the power to not vote them again or remove them. Once we have that understanding, once the citizens can read the Constitution, once they know the power of the ballot, and they know that they can go beyond the ballot to hold them to account through public hearings and so on, and even petitioning them, and now we even have social media, we have change.org, I believe that the citizens will also need to be doing more. You can't just be a docile citizen and watching Big Brother and watching cartoons all day long. That is not a citizen that is going to add value. Right. So it's a two-way street.
It's been such a pleasure speaking with you, Adetunji Omotola. Before we leave you, we want you to look into the camera and briefly say to the young African on the continent and the young African in the diaspora what they need to keep at the tip of their fingers to see the future economic liberation of the continent of Africa.
I'll tell them to read about Mansa Musa, Aliko Dangote, Mrs. Alakija. There are many cases of success of Black people in Africa. There are many cases of success of Black people around the world, whether they're African Americans, Ghanaians, Malawians, Zimbabweans, Togolese, Senegalese. They need to read about Africa, the geography, the economy, the politics, and understand the differences, whether they're sharp or mild. They need to learn more African languages, even if it's good morning and goodbye, or hello and welcome, Akwaba, Medase, Mipacho. We must begin to deepen our knowledge of our continent. I think there are too many Westerners who know more about Africa than we do, from Africa south of the Sahara, Lake Chad, the Chad Basin, the Mambila Plateaus, and so on, the pyramids of Egypt. There are too many Africans who know little or nothing about the continent, and that is a dangerous game that we're playing with ourselves, because if you don't know who you are, how do you want to engage other people?
Like Adetunji just said, read more about who you are as an African, know more about your culture and history, and use it as a force to project into the future. For Africa, it's for the world, but it's the responsibility of we as Africans to show to the world that we are ready to be who we have to be for the world to realize the power we possess as Africans. Adetunji, we look forward to sitting down. We wish you a happy new year and
all so the best for having
me. Family out there in South Africa. Let's do this again.
I'm jealous of all the stuff behind you.